In this video, I interview the founder of one of the largest and best resources for worship leaders online. His name is Brian Wahl, and he founded worshiptutorials.com and the Worship Tutorials YouTube channel, both of which you've probably already have heard of. So this video will be a cool opportunity for you to hear more about Brian's story and the story behind Worship Tutorials. And along the way, you're gonna pick up some practical tips and advice for your worship ministry. This video is brought to you by Lead Worship with Ableton, a free training to help you get started with the #1 worship leading software. With Ableton Live, you can run a click, backing tracks, and automate lyrics and lighting. It's the best tool for increasing excellence and eliminating distracting mistakes in worship. Click the link in the description to enroll in the free training today. My name is Jake Goslin with Churchfront.com, an online resource for innovative and creative church leaders. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you can receive all of our latest content to help you grow yourself and grow your church. Make sure you also check out the links below in the show notes for some free and helpful tools for your worship ministry. I want you guys to let me know below in the comments, what are some of your favorite YouTube channels that you follow? I personally love following Casey Neistat, Peter McKinnon, MKBHD, and a bunch of other great YouTube creators. And of course, one of my favorite channels is Worship Tutorials by Brian Wahl. His channel has a ton of content on worship ministry and growing in your skill set as a worship leader. His channel is also huge. It has 356,000 subscribers as of this recording in June of 2018. So for me, as a small YouTube creator, I look up to Brian and what he's built with Worship Tutorials, and I was just super grateful for the chance to sit down with him over Zoom and ask him some questions and hear more about his story. And I thought it'd be a lot of fun to capture this conversation so you could listen in as well. This long form interview is also in audio form on my podcast, so you can click the link below in the description to listen to this interview on the go. And I've also included some quick navigation links so you can skip around to the different topics of conversation that we cover. So without further ado, here's my interview with Brian Wahl, the founder of worshiptutorials.com. Brian Wahl, welcome to the Churchfront podcast.
Hey, good to be here.
Dude, it means a lot that you're able to make time to hop on Zoom here and just have a chat, get to know one another. And I thought it would be fun because I want to hear your story. Just selfishly, I want to get to know you and kind of hear about your background and the story of Worship Tutorials. But I thought it'd be fun too for the listeners of the podcast to also have a listen in on who you are, because maybe they already follow you on YouTube, but it'd be great for them to kind of know a little bit more about just where you're serving in ministry right now and also kind of how you got there. So why don't we just begin with you giving us just kind of the Cliff Notes version of your journey into worship ministry.
Okay, I'll try and be brief because I'm known to talk way too much. All right. So I grew up in a Mennonite Brethren church, which is like not very many people know what that is. But I grew up in Oklahoma, like a strong Christian family, and grew up really plugged into church. And I had a youth pastor in high school who really impacted me. His name was Wendell Lowen, and I really wanted to be Wendell, I think. And so I went into college declaring youth ministry as my major. I went to a Christian school in Kansas called Tabor College, and I kind of quickly realized that I really wanted to be more like this guy than I wanted to be a youth pastor. And so I thought that's not the right reason to go into ministry. And it's funny because Wendell became a professor at the college, so I got to continue that relationship with him. But yeah, so I kind of moved away from ministry as education to science. So I ended up graduating with a degree in chemistry and biology. And so I worked in that field for maybe 4 years. I worked in a lab. We studied lupus. And so, and I thought, well, maybe I'll go to graduate school. That's where I met my wife as well. So my wife works in science as well. So it's kind of a weird background. And I also did business, did a master's in business, MBA, in the process. So I kind of was searching for what I wanted to be when I grew up, when I was a kid. My bad. My phone just went off. So
that's okay.
How heavily do you edit these episodes?
Not a lot. That's the beauty of it. Nice and raw.
I got a spam phone call. It almost looked like my own phone number. You know what I mean? We'd like to sell you a timeshare or maybe some insurance or something. Okay. So, yeah. So I was working, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, as a career. I was working in a lab, and I was really plugged into a church, and I was plugged into the youth ministry, and the youth pastor there left, and so there was a vacancy, and I applied for that job. I kind of came to the realization, like, I really want to do ministry, and I really don't want to pursue, like, I was applying to dental school at the time. I just decided that's not what I wanted to do with my life. So I got the job. It was funny. It was like a 6-month like interview application process at the church where I had been serving as a sponsor for like years. It was strange. Wow. Churches are weird, man. And so I did youth ministry in Oklahoma, and that was in Edmond, Oklahoma for a while, for maybe 3 years. And I did worship and stuff there as well. And then my wife, she finished a PhD at the University of Oklahoma, which is why we moved where we are currently. So we live in Chapel Hill, North Carolina at the moment. So my wife works at UNC. So that moved us out here, and I was unemployed when we moved here. So I found a church on Craigslist that was looking for a worship leader. And I can't remember how many years ago this was. This might have been 06, 05, somewhere in there, maybe 10 years ago, close to 10 years ago, maybe a little more. So we moved out here, and I started working like really part-time, and I got another job sort of in the science field because I could fall back on that education and experience. And eventually I worked my way into full-time ministry, which is hard to do. So a lot of people, a lot of worship leaders and people out there are doing it either volunteer or very part-time, just because churches can't afford to pay staff. And so I feel your pain because I've been there many years. So it's hard. And so all along the way, I started thinking about how can I, because I was in small churches, like 20, 25 people in attendance, up to maybe 100, 150. And I just, you don't have resources, you don't have money, you don't have volunteer resources, musicians. And I just kept thinking over and over again, what can I do to make this environment better? And so that's where worship tutorials was sort of born out of that. Cause I started teaching how to do songs. So this was back in like 06 when I started doing this. There were not many people on YouTube teaching how to play stuff back then. I got lucky because I got started on YouTube, over 10 years ago. I think it was 08. I think it's 10 years ago that I started uploading videos. And so because if you try to start a channel today, it's way more difficult. There's a lot more out there competing for people's views. But 10 years ago is a different story, and there was only 1 or 2 people uploading like how to play songs on the guitar, worship songs. And I just kind of thought, well, I can do it better and more consistently. So that's what I did. Actually, initially I started uploading my own songs, and I thought I'm going to try and build a platform as like an entertainer or something, which I quickly realized I'm not good enough to do that. So, and I also realized at the same time that if I can make something that equips somebody rather than just tries to entertain somebody, that you can build a much larger platform and make much more of an impact if that's your goal, rather than to say, look at me, look how good I am, look at these songs I've written. Not to discount that, but if you're going to make it as a entertainer, you've got to be really, really good. But anyway, that's a different topic. So I started, making videos and stuff about 10 years ago. And then in the process, I was working for I was actually on staff at 2 different churches at the same time, we shared a building with 3 other churches. There's like 5 of us sharing a building. It was a very strange situation. And so that all kind of came to a close, that chapter. I actually shared about that in the last worship leader. If you don't mind, if I plug my video real quick.
Go ahead. They'll plug away.
I shared a story from that experience in the last Worship Leader Wednesday video that I did with my buddy Fuller. The video was how to heal when you've been hurt by a church. And so I was pretty badly in that situation. And so I shared that story in that video, and I talked about sort of how I dealt with that. But anyway, so there.
Yeah, dude, that was a great video too. I mean, I watched it yesterday. I appreciate the, just the openness, honesty, vulnerability. That's what the word I was looking for. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah. Thanks for that. So I mentioned in that video, I have not shared that story with many people. And now I just shared it with like 350,000 people or however many,
Yep. Yep.
And so that was a difficult decision, to share that story, but hopefully I really hope that it encourages people and just lets people know you're not alone when you go through that stuff.
Totally.
So that sort of, vocational ministry door came to a close. And then, one of those pastors of those churches, so one of the churches they both, sort of closed up shop. They both kind of died. And one of them I was really close with, the pastor, and he said, I saw there's an opening for this job at New Hope Church. And this was about 5 years ago. And so I applied, and within a month or so I was hired, it's a crazy story because New Hope is like, you call it a mega church. It's a multi-site church with, 8 or 10 locations, probably about 5,000 in attendance per weekend. And so for me to go from leading worship in a church of like 35 people to leading worship in that sort of environment was a bit of culture shock. It was also one of those things, like it was like a pipe dream, like I never thought I would have an opportunity to work for a church like that. And it's not at all what I expected it to be, which is also another topic for another day.
Yeah.
Mega church is not what you think it is if you're not involved in a mega church.
Yeah.
But anyway, so especially if you have negative connotations of it. But anyway, moving on.
So many little rabbit trails we could go.
I know.
Yeah.
It's not, people are not just out for your money. Okay, let's move on. So I kind of kept things going, and I had, a couple years ago, so I've been at New Hope now for about 5 years. I was a campus worship leader for the first 3 in Garner, North Carolina, which is a suburb of Raleigh. If you any of you listeners know who Scotty McCreery is, he came from Garner, North Carolina. It's a water tower town. That's the name of his song. I've actually sung it, and it was not my favorite thing to sing in the world. But anyway, I'm not a fan of country music, but okay.
Man.
So I'm working in Garner, and I was full-time in that role as a worship leader. And all the while, worship tutorials is kind of growing and growing and growing. And it was really just another, looking back on it. So about 2 years ago, I transitioned out of that role at Garner, the Garner campus, and I went full-time to worship tutorials. So that's been about a couple years now, but I'm still involved in my church as a contract sort of weekend. I lead worship every weekend, but I don't work full-time for them, if that makes sense. Just a contract position. Yeah. So I kind of hop around. If somebody's on vacation, I'll fill in for them, because all of our campuses have full-time worship leader staff, if they need some support or something. Yeah, I'm available. Yeah. There it is in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, it's great. I feel like I know you a whole lot better now in your journey, your background. And it's so cool how God takes you from a very science and business background. And now you're, well, that's my question, is how do you feel like that background informs what you're doing today?
Yeah, that's a good question that I don't really know the answer to, because I have a very weird educational work experience background. I mean, I went to a Christian college, so I took Bible courses and I have education in that, but I don't have a degree. I don't have a youth ministry degree or degree in music. I would call myself a pretty average, mediocre guitar player. I'm not some musical virtuoso. But I do think so. I've had opportunity to work. I think the science part is the most interesting. It's it gives me a different perspective, especially too, because my wife, she has a PhD in immunology, microbiology, and she does research. And so I look at things differently, especially, I've made a handful of videos that talk about it. That's about science. One is about the word evolution, or the word evolving, in the song "So Will I," which, man, people.
Yeah.
So, I come at those kind of conversations from a different perspective. And I don't know, it really informs the way I see the world and the way that I see the evidence of a God that created the world, looking through the lens of science, which I think people think are opposed, but they're not, in my opinion. They support one another. Yeah, but as far as like what I do on a day-to-day basis, I don't know how much I pull from that experience. Yeah.
When was it that you kind of realized worship tutorials was gaining momentum and it was turning into something more than just, hey, I'm just posting tutorial videos online? But
yeah, so it was very much a hobby for years, for about 5 or 6 years. And it got to where some of the tutorial videos, like the classic, how great is our God and 10,000 reasons, like those videos have got to where they have lots and lots of views. And I make guitar lesson videos as well. And so I started building like a subscriber base, and I also kind of leveraged that into a mailing list that I kept in communication with. And the reason I was able to go full time with it was because of pads. And so I had used a set of pads when I was in these really small churches, just because, I wouldn't have a keyboard player every weekend, or I would just need something. And so I had found a couple sets of pads out there that, or just one actually. And I used them. They worked well as Carl Vercade's pads, which you can download for free. Mm-hmm. Plug those, Yep. And, I was just like, I want a little more variety because I've been using them for a couple months. And so I made my own set of pads, and I really liked the way they sounded. And I just kind of thought, well, I've got this audience of people, or not an audience, but like I've got a platform of people that I could release this to. And I really think it would help other people, in situations like me, because I know most worship leaders out there in churches that are struggling for resources, whether it's financial or personnel or whatever. So I put them out there, and I started making a lot of videos trying to talk about how pads could help people. And that kind of took off for me. And so that's what allowed me financially to make that move. It took a few years before I felt like I was ready to do that. But yeah. And then it just kept building and building and building. And I just really felt like this whole story, if I look back on it, is what I see is God just like a series of people sometimes, like when I was in youth ministry, kids would always ask, how do you know what God's will for your life is? Like, that's a question everyone, especially young people want to know. And it's like, you think there's going to be this voice from heaven saying like, you should go be an accountant or something, whatever. But it's really, if I look back on my life, it's really just a series of opportunities, either coming to an end or opening. And I've chosen to look at it as like, these are things God has given me, like a platform on YouTube. God has given me that, and he's trusted me with it to use it to glorify his name and further his kingdom. And so, that's what I've done, and God has just continued to bless that. And so now I try and do a lot, because my experience too was, I was a worship leader. I got a job as a worship leader, but my educational background is biology. And, I was a youth pastor for a few years, so I had no idea how to do the job. I could play and sing a song, but that's like, 1% of what goes into doing the job of a worship leader well. And so I had no idea how to recruit people, how to build teams, how to lead people. And that's when I landed at New Hope Church, I started to learn those things. I learned them along the way, but I really had people like Fuller. The reason he's in videos is he poured into me as a mentor and taught me a lot of things. And so I wanted really just to share that, because I know there's a lot of worship leaders out there, or whether you're volunteer or staff, that you have this job, and a pastor's like, okay, go be a worship leader. And I'm sure people are just thinking like, okay, I don't know what to do. Like, I can play and sing. my instrument or whatever, but I don't know how to lead a rehearsal. I don't know how to build a team. I don't know how to coach a vocalist on a harmony part. That's something that's my personal weakness anyway. But yeah, and so I've really started to make content less keep like teaching how to play songs, but also teach people how to lead worship well. So,
what's your favorite part about being a YouTube creator?
Well, I mean, it's my job to make videos. It's part of my job anyway, which is a whole lot of fun for me personally. But I think so. My favorite part is when I upload something. If I can, because YouTube is instant, people will comment, like whatever. And if like this video about when I shared my story about what happened at this church, there were lots of comments saying, "Thank you for sharing that. I'm going through that too." This, I know now that I'm not alone, or it's encouraging. And that sort of feedback, just to know that like something that I've shared or that I've gone through or that I've learned, if I can share it and it helps people in a very tangible way, that's probably my favorite thing, the most rewarding thing.
What's the most challenging thing about being a YouTube creator?
On the flip side, there are, running you do the same thing. If you run a Christian YouTube channel, I mean, there's a couple things you never talk about, right? Politics and religion. And we talk about one of those things as like, that's our goal to talk about one of those things. Yeah. And so, man, there's a lot of hate, and I can't stand that. I get really passionate about that. And it's very hard for me to not respond in the moment to certain comments and things that you get on a regular basis. I don't know if you experience that, but I do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, one of the funniest ones. I have a video about building a drum set for a worship context. So I think the video is called "How to Build a Worship Drum Set," which for worship leaders like us, that makes sense. It's like, yeah, I made this video because there was no other video out there like that. And I was trying to get a drum set together for my church plant. So I made this video like 5 months ago, and then it randomly the YouTube algorithms started like getting a lot of views. Yeah. And then you would get a lot of like non-Christian musicians seeing the video and wondering like, what the heck is a worship drum set? And then they're like,
have no idea.
and they're like, oh, can you use these drums to worship Satan? Can you all these like ridiculous comments and stuff. And it's just, and then there's the ones that are just like, there's a lot of haters, and that's kind of that. It is like, I don't know. I think. I mean, that's why I guess I'd ask you your advice on how to deal with that stuff. I think I'm just becoming a little bit more resilient towards stuff like that. But it's hard.
I feel like a hardened, I don't know. So
your heart just becomes harder.
Yeah. I've started making more and more videos, especially like with Fuller, where we'll be like, should we sing the song "Reckless Love"? And that video had a lot of views. Mm-hmm. The one about evolution, and those are the ones like I get the same thing too. Like, oh, I worship Satan. It's like, that's almost entertainment.
Yeah.
Just stupid, and if people want to say that, whatever. But the comments that the reactions that I really get under my skin are when Christians or people who say that they're Christian just treat each other in ways that are completely unchristlike. And I just can't, because there's a couple, like one of my biggest pet peeves is hypocrisy and self-promotion. Those are my two biggest pet peeves, probably. But the whole thing about like, if you say you believe something but your actions are completely the opposite in the way that you treat people, I don't know, it really gets under my skin. And I get a lot of like righteous anger, I think, there. Yeah. But I've learned I've learned not to respond in the moment. Sometimes I respond in a kind of snarky way, like first of all, like getting into a comment fight on the internet is just pointless anyway. And nobody wins. Everybody loses those collectively. And so I have in the past reached out to people privately. So as far as your question, like, how do you deal with that? That's one thing I've done. Like, if it's really offensive to me, I will privately reach out to a person and just say, hey, I think you may have misunderstood me or whatever, like, or this isn't the way we should do this. And usually that has a pretty productive outcome, I've noticed, which is what the Bible tells us to do in Matthew. You know, if you have a problem, if you have an issue with your fellow believer, talk to him about it, you know, privately, not in a comment on a public website.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no.
But most of the time I just don't respond. You know?
Yeah. I think if Jesus were around today, he would have said something about trying not to debate people in comment sections and social media threads. It's just
Facebook,
not going to edify anybody or help anybody. Yeah. So another YouTube question. These are really selfish questions, and you know, I think hopefully other folks will find this interesting too. Who's the favorite YouTuber that you follow?
Oh my goodness. I just started watching Will Smith's YouTube channel. Have you seen it?
Oh yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
I mean, it's totally not fair because he's Will Smith, right? Like Will Smith, the actor, has a YouTube channel. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. It's awesome.
Yep.
So I watch YouTube for entertainment. So I watch stuff like that. I used to watch a lot of vloggers, you know, like I watched a lot of Casey Neistat stuff, if you know who that is. Oh, yeah. And not so much because I enjoyed the content, but more just like, cause I think that medium is still, I mean, it's kind of like blown up and it is big now, but I used, years ago I'd watch it and just try and think like, how could I leverage this kind of content into, furthering the church or God's kingdom or whatever, which is why I started the Sunday vlog, which was kind of an experiment that failed a little bit, but for a couple of reasons. So I watch stuff like that. Man, that's a good question. Who's my favorite YouTuber?
Yeah.
Let me look up YouTube right now.
I would say my go-to is Casey as well. I mean,
really?
I think, yeah, his personality is entertaining. His just, I don't know, his art, like his creative process is just fascinating, but
yes.
It's just,
well, he's inspiring too, because of how much he works, like just how like much he creates. That's inspiring to me. Yeah. I haven't watched him a lot lately. Peter McKinnon is another guy like him that I like to watch.
Yep.
If you're not familiar with Peter McKinnon.
Well, I like the blend. I like the blend of Peter has between the vlog and kind of tutorial or educational. Like that's where I feel like there's like a really sweet spot that I'm trying to model that in a sense with Churchfront. I mean, I think I don't do very much vlogging, but sometimes it's fun to like combine those two worlds of like, hey, like here's how to do, like I did a video about church lighting design, here, come with us on this journey as we go to a church to like show you how to do it, So
yeah. Okay. So this makes me think of something that I've really been thinking about for a long time when it comes to church. But it would apply to you and I as well, because you and I make content for our own, channels. But I think churches do a mostly across the board terrible job of content creation.
Couldn't agree more.
Like a lot of some churches do it well, but it's a very, very select few. I think the church has a lot to learn from people like YouTube channels like that, Peter McKinnon, Casey Neistat, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I think so that's part of why I did the Sunday vlog too, was because I wanted to like try and create content that put my church on display a little bit, in a way that was entertaining and compelling. Mm-hmm. And so I think the church can do a lot better job as far as like creative storytelling when it comes to telling the story about why the church is so important, but not just the church, but why like our church is a great place to plug in. A talking head pastor saying, come to our church for this new sermon series is not very good. Like that doesn't compel me to come.
Nope.
Right?
Nope.
Tell me a story about why I should come. Yep. And you telling me what you're going to talk about, that might be because it might be something I'm interested in, but man, we can do a way better job.
Yep.
So
yeah, I could not agree more in just like kind of that critique of like just church at large right now.
Yeah.
Not taking advantage of these tools we have. And
right.
I kind of have this like fantasy dream of like, it would be cool someday to like start a church where you could like have all these like content creators that are already doing stuff like, I don't know, like yourself,
Yeah.
myself, other guys like who are in this space, Brady Shear. And like, what if all that energy was leveraged towards actually building the church? I don't know what the heck that would look like, but
I'm totally with you.
you know,
I feel like we're on the same exact page.
yeah, because I look at the sheer impact that someone like a Casey's able to make because of his channel, or same thing with Peter McKinnon, like, and to leverage that for good things. Like Casey, I think last year did some like, hey, let's fill up a huge cargo plane and send it to a country that needs food, you know, like a church would like love to be able to do something like that, but doesn't have nearly the amount of like attention as someone like a YouTuber
you don't have
like that
the same platform.
Yeah.
And I think it all comes down to storytelling. Like we do, as far as churches, you know, pastors are great storytellers. The great pastors are great storytellers. Mm-hmm. So I think churches understand that. Yeah. It's just creating content that's engaging is really hard.
Well, imagine even if, like, you know, someone like Stephen Furtick or Brian Houston, they had, do you follow Gary Vaynerchuk at all in his content?
I do.
So like he has like a guy who he's like, you know, he's like the most cutting edge like marketer, user of these content creator. And like he just has a guy following him around as this like personal vlogger, which sounds crazy, but like it's working in terms of like he's building a crazy marketing empire. But like what would it be like for, you know, imagine if Elevation or Life Church or Hillsong or these churches that have the resources just said, hey, video intern, instead of just making, you know, sermon bumper videos or baptism recap videos, let's make vlogs. And like, it's going to be raw. We're not going to like make it super polished and clean and then start putting that stuff out there. It would be really interesting. But I think like Brady Shear talks about this a lot, how a lot of like the churches that are currently like really successful, their success is built off of things that worked 10 years ago, not necessarily the things that are working today. Oh, yeah. So they're not really requiring, like they don't have to innovate in this area. So, well, this was a fun little dreaming geek session we had here. Yes. And like, I don't know, I think the listeners could benefit from this. This is stuff beyond worship leading I think about a lot of the time. Yeah. I guess just to kind of like wrap things up here in our conversation, I guess I have one more question. Like, you are in a unique position where you're constantly hearing from so many people in worship ministry, just based on like people commenting on videos. Maybe they email you or reach out to you. Are there any like common threads or like problems or challenges that you kind of hear consistently a lot of the times from worship leaders today? Like, and maybe you don't have to touch all of them. Like, what's the first one that comes to your mind?
So I think a couple things that I keep in mind every time I make something is people don't have. I'm also I lead worship at a church with a lot of resources. So like we have like cool tech and lots of, you know, not all of our campuses have a lot of people, but one thing that I see a lot is people don't have money to buy stuff for their churches or to create like a environment that looks like what you see on a YouTube video from Elevation or whatever. Yeah. And they don't have volunteers, or the volunteers that they do have don't maybe they're not that skilled yet, or they don't play the style of music. So that's one thing. It's a lack of resources, whether it's human resources or financial resources. Another thing I see is a lack of planning a lot. And so I try and make a lot of content to impress on people like how important it is especially for a worship leader. Like if you're not scheduling songs until Saturday or even the week of, like that, you can do so much better and your team will benefit so much from it. And like, if you do simple things to prepare people, like the level of excellence in your worship services will just go, it's like, you won't even believe how much better it will be just to do things a week earlier, and be consistent with it. So I see that a lot. Like I see comments from people saying, like, well, this isn't even a reality for us because, the keys change every Sunday morning when we show up or whatever. Like that happens all the time. Yeah. And so I try and do everything through that lens, because I think a lot of times people view the church as like, we can do things for the church it's good enough, like we can wing it and that's okay because it's church. Whereas what we should think is the opposite. Like church, we're commanded by God in the Bible to do everything we do to the best of our ability, but especially when it comes to like preparing and leading a worship experience, that should be something that we take so seriously and that we try and do it is absolutely the best we can. But it's easy to get stuck in a rut where it's like, especially if you're a volunteer worship leader or you're bivocational, like you just don't have time, or everything else, you've got a family, you've got another job, you've got all kinds of commitments. And sometimes it just kind of gets put on the back burner. And so I do see a lot of interaction from both leaders and volunteers or whatever in those teams that deal with that. And I think that part of what my job is to inspire people to like, let's do it. Let's start planning ahead a little bit. Let's use tools like Planning Center and get people like chord charts and MP3 files and stuff so we can prepare. And let's have meetings with our team and talk about vision, because that's something that, what is the vision of why is it what we're doing so important? You have to continually compel people. And that's very biblical, so.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well,
hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does. Because I've like seen, especially the one where it's like, we don't have the money or manpower to accomplish things. What do we do? And I mean, it's not always a clear answer. I think though, it's like, you do have to just be more intentional about just like being creative, thinking and thinking outside the box. And like, sometimes they're like, I get questions like, hey, we want to get a light, some like new light or like Ableton Live or like a guitar for our church. Like, but I'm afraid to ask my pastor about getting one. And I'm like, well, why are you afraid to ask him? Like, what's the worst he's going to say? Like, no, right? Like, but like, it's just, you just have to like take these simple action steps and things will start to happen, or just find a bunch of used gear you could sell on eBay to make, so many churches have so much used gear sitting around. They could just make money off of. So, but
closets and all kinds of stuff. But, speaking about what you said about, it's like, we don't have money or whatever, like that doesn't mean that you can't lead worship well. Mm-hmm. So about a year ago, I worked with a friend of mine, and we came up with a vision for worship tutorials. And that's that every church in the world would have worship experience that's led with excellence and authenticity. And you can do those two things without money, without people. Like if it's just you and a guitar and nothing else, just singing, you can lead with excellence and you can be authentic, which I think is another thing that, like that, totally. Our culture craves it and they don't really see it a lot. Or we as worship leaders can do a better job of being authentic from the platform. So you don't have to have money or resources or tech or whatever to do that, to do those two things. Mm-hmm.
I think you gotta be a learner and you gotta be willing to put the work in. And I'm really grateful for your channel and how awesome of a learning and resource it is. I mean, that takes away half the challenge. Like if you're listening to this, if you are, one of the 2 worship leaders in the world who aren't probably subscribed to his channel, go do it now. Because there's 350,000 other people who are. I know, but there's a lot of people in the world, and even there's a lot of worship leaders. So it's like, go to his channel, just go on YouTube, search worship tutorials. It's going to be the first one to come up there. And make sure you guys subscribe to that. And then what will they find at worshiptutorials.com, your website?
Okay, so if you go to the website, that's where you can see all of the sort of the products that we offer. So the main things that we offer at the moment are pads, and we have multiple sets, and you have pads as well, right? Yep. So I mean, your listeners are going to be familiar with what those are.
Totally.
We have a product called Bumper Music that is sort of, I like to think of it as like pads for when you're not playing a song. So like if you want something during announcement times or prayer times, and we have different styles. It's kind of like a song without lyrics, and you get it in every key. So you can really facilitate transitions with those. We have, if you're a guitar player and you have a Line 6 Helix, we have a lot of Helix patches there. So those are like the products that we offer. We have some multi-tracks as well. But then you can also see everything is organized there. If you go for a song, lesson or something, you can go to the songs page and search by, artist or album. And then you get to a page that has like the tutorial video. If we offer chord charts for it, you can get those there, or I've linked to where you can go get them. You can see me play it like in probably an acoustic settings. Like if there's a Hillsong Young and Free song and you're like, how in the world am I going to do this with acoustic guitar? That's why I did it on acoustic guitar. So I've tried to make it to where everything's kind of organized a little better, because YouTube is just a rabbit hole. You watch one video and 2 hours later you're somewhere completely else. That's how YouTube goes.
Yep.
And they're so good at it, aren't they?
They're getting better at it.
They keep just giving you stuff that you want to watch.
Yep. It's like I don't Netflix binge, I YouTube binge.
I'm the same way. I'm the same way.
Brian, thanks so much for your time. I think it was fun for me to hear your story, and as well, I know other folks are going to enjoy this listening to as well. And just keep up the great work. You're doing so much awesome things, and you're an inspiration to me personally as someone. I'm passionate about YouTube. It's my favorite social media platform, so it just means a lot. You're like one of my heroes on YouTube.
Thank you for having me. And I love your channel as well. I watch your stuff, so I have been for a while now. It's good. It's good stuff.
Hey, that means a lot. Thanks, man. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Brian. It was a lot of fun to get to know him and just to kind of see his personality a little bit more beyond, the short YouTube videos that we all get to watch on his channel. And I'm just super grateful for him taking the time to record this podcast session and video with me. And keep an eye out on both of our channels, because in a few months, Brian and I will be collaborating. We're working on plans right now. We're just kind of finalizing dates and when we're going to make that happen and what topics we're going to cover for the videos. But whatever it is, I just know it's going to be awesome. It's going to be a blast to collaborate with him. If you found this video helpful, make sure you smash that like button, share it with your friends in ministry. You can check out some other related videos right over here. And don't forget to subscribe to the Churchfront channel so you can continue to receive all of our latest content to help you grow yourself and grow your church.